will be very difficult for the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Wali Ademo, to make a case against Turkey and the United Arab Emirates when he visits these two countries next week and tries to convince them that they should apply the sanctions that the American government had imposed on the Russian Federation because of its invasion of Ukraine 4 months ago. The senior American official has been saying for a long time that these two countries should take strong actions against money laundering and illicit finance. He will pressure both of them to be tougher on Russia and boycott her economically.
Well, I think, of course, the decision in the end is up to the UAE and to its officials and what they think is in their country's best interests. But in reality, there is to a certain extent, there is a dispute about this, whether extraterritorial sanctions are lawful, are legal under international law, are they legal or illegal? There is still a little bit of a debate. But generally speaking, I think international law, especially when there is no decision from the United Nations Security Council, that means it's probably illegal for one country to impose its laws, to impose its own interests on other third world countries or parties or companies. And therefore, this is primarily, it's going to be very difficult to justify. We have seen, for example, the European Union had has opposed this policy where extraterritorial laws by one country unilaterally imposed on other countries. Basically, they believe that the application of unilateral sanctions against, in the case of the European Union, against European countries, operators, individuals, basically are a challenge to the international law, challenge to the sovereignty of the European Union and the countries of the European Union. And that means this undermines the ability of the countries to exercise their strategic independence on the one hand, and also their economic sovereignty as well. So basically, I think it's very difficult unless there are resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council which say that the policies or the positions taken by certain countries, the countries that are under sanctions, are violations of international law and threaten international peace and security.
However, it is necessary to enter the scope of the discussion on such a political demand by the Biden administration from the perspective of the United Arab Emirates to rebut the false claims and the wrong accusations by American government officials against the Emirates. At the beginning, the Russian civilian airlines are still conducting trips between Russia and the UAE. According to BBC, quoting Sir Timothy Charles Clark, the president of the Emirati carrier Emirates, who said that it was important to recognize the Russian population may not be part of the war in Ukraine, and that the diplomatic corps of other countries who have missions in Moscow need to be able to function by moving in and out of the country. Moreover, what is happening now is a huge relocation of the Russian economy, geographically speaking. It is an evolution of both the economies of Russia and the Emirates into different areas. The two countries are taking steps to entrust each other how to keep economic relations between the two of them alive. This should alleviate the negative consequences of the sanctions against Russia, which have hurt the economies of many nations in the world. We are seeing more and more small and medium-sized enterprises and startups looking to relocate to Dubai to ensure business continuity, said George Hajej, CEO of Virtu Group, which assists companies moving to Dubai. While this Russian population movement has been visible in the migration of many entrepreneurs, lawyers, and art dealers, its size and economic magnitude is bigger than the exit of scores of Russia professionals to the Gulf region. As a business executive based in Dubai explained, the number of Russian entrepreneurs and startups has increased tenfold compared to last year in the International Free Zone Authority, said Joshan Net, CEO of IFZA, one of Dubai's many free trade areas established to attract foreign investment.
I think, first of all, there is this issue. Does one country or a group of countries have the right to impose on other countries their foreign policy, their sanctions which serve their interests? Because those other countries may not see eye to eye with, let's say, in this case, the United States and even some of the European other countries, because sanctions in the beginning, they start and end. They are a coercive instrument, and therefore they are also supposed to prevent. The purpose behind them is to prevent violence. But what we are seeing increasingly is that some countries, because of their power, because of their influence, they are willing to impose sanctions. They are willing to impose, on not only on companies but on even individuals and on certain countries, and that affects other peoples. In this case, for example, the Russian people, but it may affect the people of the third countries, which are not involved in a dispute, which are not involved in a conflict. One last point on this, and I think it's important. I remember when there used to be something called Arab boycott, and some Arab countries tried to impose their laws to ban the American companies, American ships, which are dealing with Israel, from dealing with them. And the United States at that time took the position that third countries, that these countries did not have the authority or the legal right to impose their own boycott laws on American companies or American individuals.
Among those settling in the Emirates are members of the Russian elite. This is explained by the fact that there are also many Russian celebrities, actors and singers who already owned properties but who are now moving to Dubai, applying for the investor visa available, said Valeria Zolotsko of the real estate agency AX Capital. In addition, there is an immense widening of the participation of more Russians in the thriving economy of the United Arab Emirates. The Emirates is invoking the principle of the no-party provisions in international treaties. Bloomberg News wrote that officials in the two nations, Turkey and the Emirates, have said they respect international law but aren't required to follow sanctions implemented by specific jurisdictions like the US, UK or EU, nor will they target individuals solely on the basis of their nationality.
Basically, a lot of it has to do with the power of a certain country, its ability to impose its laws, its rules on other countries. So basically, it depends also on the other side. How does the other side respond? Because, as I said before, unilateral extraterritorial sanctions are, some legal experts call them lawful, but most legal experts, or let me say at least many legal scholars, consider them unlawful under international law, per se, because that means one country cannot impose its policy, its interest on other countries. We saw this recently happen with the case of India, where the United States tried to tell the Indians that not to buy planes from Russia and not to buy oil or energy, gas from Russia. And the Indians said, this war is your war. This is not our war. This is your interest. It's not our interest. In fact, there was one Indian official made it very clear. He said, India will do what's in India's interest. And so I think basically that sums this position. And as I said, even the EU previously took a clear position that third countries, like the United States, cannot impose its own laws, its own sanctions on European companies, because that undermines their strategic autonomy and their sovereign economy.
The sanctions against Russia are not a treaty, they are mere agreements. Therefore, the United Arab Emirates is respecting international law by having non-binding status toward these agreements. It is generally recognized that a treaty does not create either obligations or rights for a third state without its consent. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of Treasury might be fully cognizant of that before he visits the Gulf area in a few days. Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.